All right, everybody, welcome to week 14 of Criminal Justice 201 Policing. I'm Professor Jason Astro. This week's lesson is Emerging Trends, the last and final lesson in this particular course. Congratulations on making it this far. Okay, let's talk about what we're going to talk about. Introduction. First, we will discuss the use of technology in policing, and then we will also discuss other emerging policing issues. Technology and policing. When you think about technology and policing, you really have to think about when you think about modern communications technology, because technology is whatever kind of advanced tool you use to make a certain task or job easier, and that could be anything. When we think about policing technology, we think about really the radio and the vehicle. So professionalism era from 1920 to 1970s, the use of communications technology really changes policing because you have this introduction of the two-way radio, and you have this rapid response to 911. So people pick up the phone, they call 911, and the police respond. So this really changes what police do every day. And it enters into what's called the standard model of police service, which is still with us today to a certain extent. You call the police instead of show up at the police station or call the police precinct itself. So 1968 was really an important year because this is the first modern use of technology by policing. And what I mean by that is the introduction of the 911 system. And by introducing the 911 system, again, you obviate the need to actually find a cop or call the telephone switchboard operator at a police precinct and get patched through to somebody. So prior to this, calling actually involved when the police are finding an officer. And that's important because now we have things that just became more and more automated after that. So this really changed the nature of police work from walking the beat and seeking out help to responding to calls in motor patrol. And it placed an emphasis in policing on efficiency and effectiveness. Effectiveness is essentially how well you do something. Efficiency is how well you do something at a particular cost or a particular time. So you also have a lot of this report collection after the fact. Policing starts to turn into a bit of a numbers game. How many 911 calls did you respond to? How long did it take? Right? These are the types of questions that start to be asked as a result of this. And a lot of policing changed through technology, through the collection of data and through data analysis, particularly CompStat that you see in the 1990s. And this leads to crime reduction, crime prevention, and also hotspot policing and aggressive sort of hands-on zero tolerance style policing, which changes policing dramatically from the 1990s moving on through really to today when it's finally weaned off. So you think about technology and policing as well. 911 and 311 was introduced in the early 2000s, and roughly 240 million 911 calls each year in the United States. That is a humongous number. That is just 911 calls. That's not the amount of people that also call 311 or flag a cop down. Think about that. That's just a staggering amount of response that we ask for from the police. Most 911 calls are not emergency, and that's why cities started 311 systems. And many police departments started this called CAD system, CAD, computer-aided dispatch, where police receive their assignments directly through computer. And now many of them get it through cell phones. And this prioritizes 911 calls, like the most serious things police respond to first. All right, and there's also online services, right? Should citizens be allowed to make criminal complaints online without a police officer? I guess depending on what it was for, I would say it's probably not a terrible idea. It would reduce the burden of some of these calls. And there are benefits and drawbacks that need to be discussed, right? And also, what if you have people who have access to police databases as a result of this? It's probably not such a great idea. So benefits and drawbacks, we have to think about all of those things, using technology when it comes to policing and making things more efficient. When we have crime analysis in policing, we have to continue to assess the nature, extent, and distribution of crime, which helps reduce and target crime through predictive policing, hotspots policing, smart policing, and identify crime suspects, correlations to assist these types of investigations. Remember, we saw a video earlier in the semester about the real-time crime center and how they do that, how they sort of use different types of analyses, including link analysis. Identify the conditions that facilitate crime and incivility. Maybe those are environmental conditions, right? Poor lighting, alleyways, or abandoned buildings, abandoned yards and fields. There's body-worn cameras, which has become popularized throughout the United States over the last 5 years or so, which there are pros and cons to that as well. And I think there's many more pros than there are cons, but cons are worth discussing, certainly, especially when it comes to privacy issues. Car cameras, there's pros and cons to that as well. License plate readers, which we talked about earlier in the semester during investigations. Conducted energy devices, CED, that's what that stands for. less lethal weapons. Remember, we try to avoid saying non-lethal because nothing really is not lethal. Real-time crime center is also another example of using technology in policing and how that can make the job more effective and efficient. And there are management and accountability systems within police departments that they use, like early intervention systems to identify officers who may be problematic or have maybe a lot of complaints or been sued. And personnel and resource allocation is a way in which police departments make determinations about who goes what where, like where do their resources have to go and why, right? Like why do we need 300 police officers in this precinct but only 100 in that? Right? And there's always challenges when it comes to technology and policing and these emerging issues. Sharing of information is a problem. Remember, there are 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States, and they don't all share information. We always have this liberty versus security issue. We have training personnel, technology failures. Things don't always work as they should. And then sometimes police officials lack the necessary skills, especially when you're talking about like maybe people who have been police officers for 10, 15, 20 years, maybe 30 years. Maybe, they are not so willing or able to adapt to technological change. And how do you address issues like that? Sometimes it's more than just training. Like try teaching, a person who has no experience with a cell phone, a smartphone, how to use a smartphone. And then imagine they're 50, 60 years old and they're like, it's not really for me. It's not that easy to do. You can't just say it's training, right? So then there's also the legality and constitutionality of technologies, which is always an issue. Observations, privacy, things like that. Plain view. What do those things mean, when you have hovercraft that can see everything? Again, 1968, just to circle back to the first modern use of technology. Remember, I think the introduction of the 911 telephone system really changes policing dramatically, and it introduces so many different facets to policing that we're still dealing with now. Standard model policing, responding to 911 calls, measuring how long that takes, how many do you go to a month. And, always we have this issue of liberty, security, and security. There's a hyperlink here, which you are not going to, you probably can't access it here, but it's in this week's discussion board. And it's called Fighting Terrorism in New York City. It's an interview with Ray Kelly, and it's really, I think, fascinating. It's from 2011. It's about 15 minutes long, and it talks about, discusses many of the challenges that places like New York have regarding, terrorism and anti-terrorism activities in the United States since 9/11. And how they're leveraging technology in order to keep the city safe, and the successes and failures. And this is from 2011, and the reason I say that again is because the technology that they're using in that they're demonstrating in this video is really quite impressive. And if you think about it, right now when I'm recording this, it's 2020, so the video is 9 years old, and the technology is old too. And as you know, modern technology changes so quickly, so you can only imagine, how much more advanced this technology is, or how many more capabilities this type of technology has today than what it had 9 years ago. Okay, so liberty and security. When we think about emerging issues in police, moving forward for you folks as students, as future professionals in law enforcement and criminal justice. A lot of things to think about. Militarization, use of force, body-worn cameras, issues related to those. Recruitment, how do you get the right people to take this job? Especially when entering this community policing era. How do you get people to adapt to technology that may not be familiar with that type of technology? And how do organizations adapt to that? You have this multicultural issue in policing, and how do properly police multicultural communities, which the United States is becoming more and more multicultural, as we know. And this idea, of course, diversity in policing. How does that reflect, right? Do we want representativeness or diversity? Remember, that was a question from a few weeks back. The police role in immigration enforcement, which is something that is, no question about it, controversial, especially the last few years. That may or may not change. Who knows? But federal mandates for local police in terms of immigration enforcement is a real big problem, especially when you think the primary function of police in the United States is to protect life and property. It's very hard to do that when, maybe some part of the population is afraid of you because they think that, you might deport them, even though that's not the role of police. Right, so that's something to think about, right? Response to special populations, especially, crisis intervention and mental health. And then, of course, this is an issue that popped up for the second half of this year, is this defunding issue, which is from a policy standpoint difficult, but from a academic sort of discussion standpoint, I think very interesting and some things that are certainly worth exploring. All right. Anyways, there's a lot of stuff that you, as students of policing and criminal justice, will be entering into the world of as you move through your education and into your careers. So I wish you all the very best of luck with that. That's for sure. Okay, so let's talk about your assignments and how we're going to wrap up this course. All right, so remember to view YouTube video fighting terrorism in New York City. View that video. It's really interesting. It's about 15 minutes long. It's one of students' favorite videos in this entire course. And it's in order for you to complete the extra credit assignment, you're going to have to, you're required to view that video. So make sure you do that. So if you choose to do the extra credit assignment, make sure it's done before 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, December 6th for up to 5 points extra credit. All right, this is the second extra credit assignment I've given you this semester, right? So hopefully many of you did the first one. And for those of you who didn't, here's another opportunity. So it's up to 5 points. That means that you have to answer all 5 questions fully in order to get the full credit for that. And then also make sure your reflection assignment number 4 is completed before 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday, December 2nd. All right, I hope you all found this very, very useful. I wish you all the very best of luck, and I will see you online.